few years ago, I was on a small plane that was taxiing out of the gate at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, preparing to fly to Milwaukee. Pilot gets on the intercom and says, "This is going to be a short flight, ladies and gentlemen. It's only 20 minutes, but we're expecting turbulence, so we're going to keep the seatbelt sign fastened the whole time." Now, even though we're still on the ground, my hands grip the sides of the seat because I'm afraid of flying. Well, actually, that's not true. I can't really say that to you. Flying is fine. Crashing is what I fear, right? People aren't afraid of flying. I like to say I like to keep my feet on terra firma. The more firma, the less terra. You know, so sure enough, the plane does hit turbulence as the pilot promised. It begins bouncing through the air like a rock skipping over a pond, and I'm stressed. And I spent a lot of my life trying to combat stress. Fear of flying used to be one of them. Have you ever noticed in your own life when there are people who don't share the particular stress that stresses you, they come to you and they try to talk you out of it with logic? Don't you hate that? So people used to say to me, "Don't be afraid, it's much more dangerous to drive than it is to fly." Okay? A well-meaning friend said one day, she must have just come back from a yoga class or a meditation. She was very mellow. I tell her the story. She comes up to me. She puts her hand on my heart. She looks me in the eye and says, "Don't be afraid if you get on a plane and it's your time to go. Just consider that your time to go." I looked at her, I said, "What if it's the pilot's time?" Shut up. So as we're bouncing through the air, every time the plane hits a bump, I go, "Ah!" And the plane smooths out. I relax. I happen to look across the aisle. There, sitting next to his mother, who was a boy who could not have been more than 5. And don't you know that every time the plane hit a bump and I went, "Ah," this boy would go, what do you think? Whee! Shown up by a 5-year-old, and every time the plane smoothed out, I'd relax, the boy would get upset. I remember he looked at the ceiling because that's where the voice had come from. He said, "Hey, do it again." And I'm looking at this young man, and I have one of those moments where I understand something very clear about life. What I realized was that the boy and myself were being given exactly the same information. The data coming into us was exactly the same, yet our responses were completely different. And what was interesting to me is the realization that I spent so much of my life trying to change the outside turbulence in my life to calm the inner stress, when he and I had the same turbulence, we had completely different responses. And I'm wondering, how could that be? And what I come to understand is the only difference between the boy and myself was our self-talk. The things we said to ourselves was different, not the actual event. Self-talk is defined as that ongoing dialogue we have with ourselves that determines how we view the world. We do it all the time. How many of you talk to yourselves? Some people raise their hands, others go, "Do I or don't I?" No, I don't think so. I wouldn't tell him anyway. I just, maybe, fruit. Turns out we talk to ourselves all the time. And the key to managing stress, indeed the key to staying balanced, indeed the key to dealing with the ups and downs and uncertainties and chaos of this wonderful thing we call life, is learning to manage your self-talk. And what I also realized about this young man and myself was that both of us, even with the same stimuli, were different in all 4 areas in which we as human beings process information. I've come to understand there's something called the 4 quadrants of well-being. When people talk about being in balance, what we talk about is having those 4 quadrants in some kind of equitable balance for each other. Those 4 quadrants are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. In other words, it could be said, essentially, as human beings, we are creatures of mind, body, heart, and soul.